The election bugle was sounded in India this week with a schedule for the polls being released. It's often called the world's biggest election, and indeed, some of the numbers it throws up are staggering. This year, 814 million people will come out and vote over 5 weeks in April and May. That's 100 million more than the last election in 2009, nearly twice the population of the UK. No wonder then organizing this election is a mammoth task. 930,000 polling stations will be set up across the country. It'll cost government agencies around $500 million. And if you take into account what individual parties are likely to pump in, some estimates suggest the spending could go up to nearly $2 billion. So with election dates being announced, what does it mean for businesses here? Is it life as usual, or will everything go on hold? Shilpa Kannan spoke to Sidharth Birla, the president of the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry.
As far as the election dates go, given 2 or 3 weeks here, the entire country knew that this is the period in which the elections would be held. So it's no great surprise, it's just certainty.
But the election itself, I mean, how important is it really as an investor when you're looking to put your money in a place? Is the election really such a big deal?
Say somebody putting up a cement plant, not going to look less than 20 years. In 20 years, conceivably, we'll see 4 elections and completely 4 different outcomes possibly. So I don't think that an investment is going to be driven by one election or the other. It will be driven by the potential of the country, by the potential of the market, and the ease of doing business in this country. We've had an aberration in the sort of climate, media, the messaging. I think the messaging, we've got it wrong in the last year.
But do you think it's going to be easy for any government that steps in? I mean, can they just step in and kickstart the reforms, or do you think it's going to be harder than that?
We expect, and one of the first things that we expect is that executive decisions will be put into fast track. We've seen that over the last 1.5 years, a lot of decision making has been sort of dispersed from the cabinet into group of ministers and things like that. We expect that the new cabinet, whichever government again that might be, would take decision making firmly back in its hands. So I think the executive decisions will get going, and we have sufficient policies. There can always be better policies, but we have sufficient policies to allow our growth to get back on track.
What, according to you, should be on the agenda now for the new government?
Every government will have to take a call between some quick hits and some long-term fixes. So I think in terms of quick hits, maybe we need to focus on inflation. The moment we focus on inflation and can address it through better distribution, through better procurement practices, through better price controls, we might be in a position to see the central bank also relax a bit on its monetary policy. So I think it will have a lot of positive effect.
What about the long-term solution?
In the long term, we are looking to the creation of an atmosphere which encourages investments. How can you encourage investments? Number one, it's purely a signal, because the government can't tell somebody that invest here and invest there. I think they can support it by decision making, by having clarity in laws, by almost pledging, if you like, that, you know, we will not be retrospective in our thinking, we will not be retrospective in application of any laws, policies, we will not revisit decisions without absolutely sound and very well established reasons. These are the kind of things that will give faith to decision making, because the Indian market is very much there.
Now, whether you call them hawkers, peddlers or street vendors, roadside retail is big business here in India. About 20 million people ply their living on the pavements of the towns and cities, and hundreds of millions of others are their customers. But it's an industry riddled with problems. So can a new law aimed at helping these traders really make a difference? Simon Atkinson starts his report in the capital, Delhi.
For the last 25 years, Nancho's been running this roadside market stall. The products she sells are cheap, the profit margins are low. Like most street sellers, she works in the shadow economy. She has no official right to trade here, and that means she's vulnerable.
Sometimes officials have come, they've scattered our products all over the floor, and they take money from us. 400 rupees, 500 rupees, sometimes even 1000 rupees from some people. And even after this, they close us down and threaten us. We have been here for such a long time, but what can we do?
So it's little wonder traders here are celebrating a new law that should give them more power. Among other things, it forces local authorities to recognise street traders, to licence them, and to create trading zones where they can operate legally.
This law will not only bring dignity to this to the livelihood of 20 million street vendors in India, but it will also change the face of Indian cities, because it talks about participative management, urban management. It mandates participation of street vendors in management of vending zones, in decision making of vending zones. So along with changing livelihood of these people, along with bringing dignity to the street vendors, it will also change the face of Indian cities, the way they look like.
It might make a difference to conventional shopkeepers too. This shoe store's been in Mansoor's family for 3 decades. He thinks street vendors help bring people to the area, and he doesn't even seem to mind them selling very similar products right outside his door. But he isn't convinced the new laws will work.
At the moment, the stalls create traffic congestion. So that's something we do have to look at. If they're given a different business area to set up their stalls, then they would be separated from the other businesses like mine. They won't get the kind of footfall they get here. So that's bad for them.
Street vendors are definitely part of the fabric here in India, and for many people they're a lifeline. For one thing, it's very convenient. Whether you want credit for your phone or some food to take home for dinner, you rarely have to look very far. And then there's the price, and that's very important when the cost of living is rising so rapidly. Most of the things you find here on the street cost considerably less than in the shops, and many of the traders I've spoken to have said that if they no longer face the risk of fines and bribes, then they'll be able to pass that on to their customers. Some complain that while street vendors have few rights, they also have few overheads, with no rent to pay and no taxes to declare. To Rabendra though, that's a flawed argument. He's been selling fruit and vegetables on the streets since he was 13, and now uses what he makes to look after his parents and raise his children.
We are willing to pay taxes. The government should only take minimum taxes, but we are willing to pay it. We also pay taxes when we buy grocery from farmers who produce vegetables like potatoes, tomatoes, etc. We pay taxes and then we sell these vegetables to people.
Fewer than 3% of people in India pay income tax. Bringing more into the system is a long-held aspiration here. With street traders often barely making enough to get by, their tax revenues wouldn't mean much for government coffers. But for those like Nancho, getting a little more protection and freedom to run their businesses does seem to mean quite a lot.
Simon Atkinson reporting there. Right, it's time for us to take a short break. When we come back, by fair means or foul, the business is trying to tap the taste buds and wallets of Delhi's foreign communities.